When night falls, they come into their own. Astrophotographers portray the night sky in spectacular images. With their cameras, they show celestial phenomena in a way never seen before. On voyages of adventure over 5 continents. Today, Canada. On his search for the Northern Lights, we follow Yuichi Takasaka through the wintry landscape of the Yukon.
My name is Yuichi Takasaka. I was born in Japan but moved to Canada when I was 20 years old.
Yuichi is a photographer who specializes in taking spectacular shots of the night sky. For the moment, it is wild caribou that fill his view as he journeys to the Arctic Ocean to capture a very special phenomenon.
I have been shooting Northern Lights, millions of images in order to take time-lapse videos. I have been taking Northern Lights since 1990.
Yuichi begins his photo expedition into the Canadian Arctic in Vancouver, British Columbia. Today, he takes time-lapse shots of the city's skyline, but tomorrow he will set off into the wilds of northern Canada. It's the end of March, which means 2 weeks of icy temperatures as he aims to capture pictures he's been dreaming of since childhood.
In Japan, we learn about Northern Lights, which we call aurora. In the schools, we learn there are so many media going about Northern Lights as well. So everybody in Japan would say, I would like to see Northern Lights before I die. When I was young, I read a book called Alaskan Story by a Japanese writer, Jiro Nitta. That book describes Northern Lights so vividly. I've never seen aurora back then, of course, and but to read about that story was very, very special. So I'm going over to Yukon and Northwest Territories. From there on, I can take ice road on the Mackenzie River to Tuktoyaktuk, which is an Inuit community, right beside Arctic Ocean on the Beaufort Sea. I would like to go over and get some Northern Light shots. Whitehorse is pretty warm still, about 0 degrees. But as you drive up north, of course it gets colder and colder. When it's a strong wind, it can go wind chill factor of -50. Easy. So I brought my cold gear, a hat, very big jacket, pants, and most importantly, you need the very nice boots. I will fly from Vancouver Airport to Whitehorse. And then I'm going to rent RV, small truck-based 4x4s, so I can drive all the way up to Arctic Ocean.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Whitehorse, Passenger 348.
The flight takes us 1,500 kilometers north along Canada's Pacific coast. Whitehorse is the capital of the Yukon Territory in the north of Canada. With fewer than 30,000 inhabitants, it holds the world record for having the cleanest air of any city on the planet. Protected by the walls of the valley, Whitehorse enjoys a milder climate than most other places at this latitude.
This is the last sushi for a while.
Yuichi travels around the globe to get his time-lapse shots of the northern lights. He is often accompanied on his expeditions by like-minded aficionados and amateur photographers. Earlier projects took him to Tasmania and other places too. Scotland, and Norway, to name just three. These colourful celestial phenomena are called the Northern Lights because they are predominantly visible in the far north. But they are also visible, though more rarely, in the southern hemisphere, where they are called the aurora australis.
What are you carrying? It's heavy. You got 2 propane bottles. This is for heating and for your fridge and freezer. And for cooking, hook the step up, pull it out, right? And go up. And for your balance, there's a handle, please.
Okay.
Go ahead. So again, it's winter. Behind this door is your bathroom. It's off limits. You're not going to use it at all.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have to go, you have to use the bush.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason why you can't use the water system is because it's winter. All the pipes they are filled with antifreeze.
Right.
As soon you put water into the sink, the toilet, or the pipes are going to crack. So open and lock the camper door. So it's going to be this lock,
Right.
and the teeth go up. So let's close it, and the handle actually you can move up and flip it in. Here's your key. Have fun. Let's play with it.
Yuichi will be traveling to increasingly remote regions on his journey, so he needs to stock up on supplies in Whitehorse, including food and water. He sets off on the Alaska Highway to Dawson City, the only tarmacked section of the 1,400-kilometer journey.
When I was young, I liked to listen to music. The band called Journey came with a music video called Faithfully. They are just going concert to concert on their own big bus. The view was just amazing, from tundra to desert. So I thought at that point, I knew I'm going to America. At 20, I just flew to Vancouver because that's the closest from Japan. It wasn't America, but it was really nice.
Halfway to Dawson, the route takes Yuichi past a photographic opportunity he cannot pass up: the Five Finger Rapids. A magnet for landscape photographers, this location was the site of high drama more than 100 years ago. At the height of the 1898 gold rush, many gold prospectors spent the summer navigating their overloaded dinghies and homemade rafts 1,300 kilometers up the Yukon River. One of the greatest obstacles on this dangerous route was right here, the Five Finger Rapids. Basalt rock formations block the river and split it into various tributaries. But only one of the channels heading north actually leads anywhere. In summer, the others turn into dangerous rapids. Many of the pioneers chose the wrong path and capsized. One of the 5 columns was later blown up to make the narrow straits more passable. After a long journey on a snowy road, Yuichi finally reaches Dawson City. As it starts to thaw and the sky looks like it's clearing up, tonight might see the perfect conditions good for a sighting of the Northern Lights. At Dawson City, the Klondike River flows into the wider Yukon. Though at the moment, everything is still frozen. The region east of the Alaskan border is called Klondike Fields. At the end of the 19th century, pioneers struck gold in a creek near Dawson, prompting a stampede to the area. This was the start of the famous Klondike Gold Rush. Once a quiet border town, it was suddenly brimming with shrewd entrepreneurs, mounted police, burlesque dancers, and desperate gold seekers. Today, Dawson City is an eclectic place, full of remnants of its past and attractions that draw in visitors from all over the world. The good weather is not holding. By afternoon, thick cloud is gathering in the valley. Unable to take any shots tonight, Yuichi decides to join the infamous Sour Toe Cocktail Club, which has a peculiar initiation ceremony.
That's what they call the toe jam. Kept in salt, keeps it completely
Oh, it's
preserved.
a coarse one. Oh, it's black.
Oh, it is. It's what they call necrotic. It's completely mummified.
Wow. So how do you get those toes?
We get the toes through usually anonymous donations through wills. But sometimes, like in the case of this one where it was a live person and it was an industrial accident, we can get them that way too.
So that many people it's been doing? 63774?
If you stay from freeze up to break up, then you are a sourdough.
Right, right.
But people come up here, tourist operators, miners, they come up in the spring, they leave in the fall, so they're not sourdoughs. So he said, in order to be an honorary sourdough, you have to kiss the sour toe.
Okay.
He started that in 1973. Are you ready, Yuichi?
Yes.
Here we go. In recognition of Yuichi, in the presence of witnesses, wishes to partake of an authentic sourdough cocktail, thereby following in the wayward, even staggering footsteps of Captain River Rat, will prove to be a person capable of almost anything. Almost. And is therefore fully entitled to bear this prestigious certificate, suitable for framing. So, Yuichi, you can drink it fast. You can drink it slow. But your lips must touch this gnarly toe. Just your lips, Yuichi.
Okay.
All right. Let's launch it. Kampai. Well done, Yuichi. So, Yuichi, here is the evidence of your folly,
Thank you.
and welcome to the club, sir.
Thank you.
A little to the east of Dawson City, the Dempster Highway begins on its way to Inuvik, a town beyond the Arctic Circle in the Northwest Territories. Much of the 740-kilometre-long highway follows an old dog sled trail. The highway has been designed to cope with some extreme physical conditions. The two-lane road runs through 3 mountain ranges and sits on a thick bed of gravel that insulates the permafrost in the soil below. Without this gravel cushioning, the permafrost layer would melt and the road would simply sink into the ground. Set in 2,200 square kilometers of rugged mountains and rolling tundra, Tombstone Territorial Park is one of the largest areas of natural conservation in Canada. The park is home to a vast array of wildlife, including moose, caribou, wolves, grizzly bears, and more than 130 species of bird. And it's one of the photographer's favorite spots. There's a good chance he'll get some great time-lapse shots as the weather is looking good.
So I chose this Tombstone Territorial Park this time because this is one of my favorite locations in Canada. I've been here so many times in the past. Mountains are just rugged and really nice. You can see the really nice valley here. People, hike in the summer, cross-country ski in the winter. I just be here, take pictures all night and days, and very little people comes here.
Once the intervalometer is set, the camera shoots automatically and patiently, picture after picture. It takes hours before enough shots have been taken for a short time-lapse sequence.
You know, it was blue sky earlier, now it's totally clouded and it started to snow. So sometimes happens like you get like a foot of snow, so 30 centimeters overnight. Then the next morning I wake up and like I have to dig out myself. I don't get lonely here because I know that I'm going back to the civilization, to my family. I just need my own time sometimes.
The Northern Lights, or the Aurora Borealis, to give them their scientific name, come about when charged particles, hurled into space by solar eruptions, penetrate the Earth's magnetic shield and collide with atoms and molecules in our own atmosphere. These collisions result in countless little bursts of light called photons that form the Northern Lights. Excited oxygen atoms produce red and green light, while nitrogen atoms produce pink and purple. The phenomenon is mainly seen at the Earth's magnetic poles, where our planet's magnetic shield is at its weakest. Thanks to a night of snow and icy temperatures, Yuichi was unable to photograph the Northern Lights over Tombstone Park. Now he must start the engine and let it warm up before continuing on his travels. But overnight, the engine has given up the ghost.
Okay.
The extreme cold seems to have run down the car battery. Yuichi will have to jump-start the engine. Luckily, he's brought a portable power pack for just such an occasion.
Go, go.
Yuichi continues his journey north on the Dempster Highway. No sign of human life as far as the eye can see. No side roads, no houses, no power lines. The land is vast, with the horizon stretching for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Dempster Highway, basically no more than a narrow, untarmacked track, is the only path through this immense backcountry with its breathtaking wilderness. Yuichi fills his tank again at Eagle Plains Lodge, the last rest stop before the Arctic Circle. Despite the flurry of snow, he sets up his camera on the side of the road. Tonight, luck is on his side. The sky clears and Yuichi gets his first real time-lapse shots. Light-sensitive digital cameras with long exposure times make the northern lights even lighter and more beautiful than when seen with the naked eye. In the time-lapse sequences, the accelerated paths of satellites and aeroplanes can sometimes be made out. Back on Dempster Highway, Yuichi officially enters the Arctic Circle. It was along this route that a terrible tragedy once struck. In 1911, 4 Canadian Mounties froze to death and are forever remembered as the Lost Patrol. Traveling from Fort McPherson to Dawson City, they were surprised by snowstorms that caused them to wander off the path and into the snowy landscape. The men had hired a local man called Esau George as their guide, but tragically had sent him home early. Without Esau's intimate local knowledge, the men lost their way and met their end. The traditional knowledge needed to survive in this unforgiving and harsh environment was handed down to Esau over thousands of years and through many generations. Today, many of the indigenous cultures in the Canadian Arctic have lost that precious wisdom. Robert Alexi is a Dini elder and a resident of Fort McPherson who laments this loss.
Well, I remember from back in early 40s, you know, in the summertime, in wintertime, there's nobody in McPherson. Everybody's out struggling, making their own living. No government, nothing, you know, making their own living off the land, summer and winter, until in 50s, government started coming in and giving a ration, they call, the hell they call that, income support. Now they call it income support. And then government start coming in and giving, here, we give you a house, stay in it, new house, you don't have to pay. That spoiled everything. And then you can't go out of school, you can't go out of town because your kids can't go to school. That make it worse. And then no job, them kids are brought up in the buildings, you know. And they don't know nothing. They go to school, but they don't know, if they go on the land, they don't know nothing. That's what happened.
I drove up today again to very close to Fort McPherson. Now I'm in the Northwest Territories side, across the border from Yukon. And I'm now on Peel River. It's frozen, so we are on the ice. It's called the ice bridge. So I will try somewhere from here. I'm just gonna find some good spot and then think we are gonna get something.
The trip through the snow and ice takes us 180 kilometers away to Inuvik. We continue east until we reach the Mackenzie River. Then Dempster Highway bends northwards. Now in early April, the many lakes and waterways in this region still lie under a heavy layer of snow. Only in May will the ice melt. Inuvik is the last stop on the Dempster Highway. It is populated primarily by indigenous groups, with a few non-native residents as well. The Igloo Church, located in the center of town, is considered Inuvik's most iconic landmark. Tonight, Yuichi hopes to create an urban Northern Lights time-lapse with the Igloo Church in the foreground. However, thick clouds are again foiling his plans. Since time immemorial, humans in the northern polar region have been fascinated by the northern lights. In Inuit culture, numerous myths surround this phenomenon. Some see in them ghosts of their dead or the souls of fallen warriors, while others see the lights as a warning of coming danger. Yuichi has arranged to meet Lillian Elias, one of the Inuit elders, to talk about the role of the Northern Lights in traditional mythology.
Yeah, so do you have any stories from your ancestry?
When I was growing up, Northern Lights meant a lot to me. Before I moved to Inuvik, 13 years, I was only 13 years old when I moved to Inuvik, and Northern Lights got less and less because we stayed inside the night. Because with that we have a lot of TV and everything. Northern Lights didn't mean as much as they did when I was a girl.
Right.
Because I was out every night watching Northern Lights. And our ancestors, my grandparents, my parents would tell us that if we whistle really loud, the Northern Lights are going to come down. They're going to come down and cut your neck right off and see your head rolling.
Oh, that's a good story.
That's where they taught us how it's so important to respect everything that there is on the earth
Right.
and in the skies. The colors that you see on the Northern Lights are meaningful. There's power there,
Yes.
and there's possessions that you could own, and all the different colors
Oh, I
that there
see.
is there.
What's the red mean?
Red is power.
Power.
Yes,
Ah.
power to all.
What
the
about
universe.
green?
Green is some growing, the green, like whatever grows on the land.
I see.
Yeah, that's what makes it grow.
What else the color do you have? Like purple?
Yellow.
Yellow?
Yellow is for bright,
Bright.
for making the whole earth
Mm.
be daylight,
Right.
because we have a lot of 24-hour nights.
That's right.
We have
Yes.
dark days.
On his way from Inuvik further north, Yuichi is treated to an impressive spectacle. To mark the start of spring each year, a herd of more than 3,000 reindeer are driven across the frozen Mackenzie River ice road between the communities of Inuvik and Taktayaktak. Their migration will take them to a small island in the Canadian Arctic that will serve as their calving grounds. This tradition first began in 1935, when Sami herders and Alaska natives brought a herd of reindeer, originally from Russia, to the Mackenzie Delta. The Canadian government then decided to establish farm-raised reindeer in the region to revitalize the dwindling stock of wild reindeer that traditionally provided food and fur for the locals.
Today it's really cold. It's been minus 20 and the wind is blowing, so wind chill factor is about minus 40 or even colder. So, you know, any exposed area of the skin can freeze like within 1 minute. So you have to really be careful. The chain tying down the camper from a truck broke off somewhere. It was lucky that happened in a village that I can get the parts. Still loose. This ice road is made by government of Northwest Territories highway. Early season they started to remove the snow, so it's really gets really flat and it cools down really quickly because snow insulates. So they remove it and then ice gets thicker and thicker. So it's much nicer and then flat. But some places like there's a current underneath. This is already Mackenzie River. So when the current is fast, you know, ice becomes thinner. End of the season in the spring, you shouldn't be wearing a seat belt. They just, you know, just for precaution.
In his camper van, Yuichi follows the reindeer's route over the ice. The Mackenzie River, also called the Amazon of the North, flows from Great Slave Lake northwards out into the Beaufort Sea. For much of the year, the towns around the river delta are only accessible by air or boat. But once the river freezes over, travellers driving north from Inuvik take the roughly 180-kilometre-long Mackenzie River Ice Road. On the slippery surface of the river, you have to drive carefully. Now in the spring, the ice is already thinning, and drivers are advised not to wear a safety belt, just in case. However, the ice road might soon become a thing of the past, as a proper road to Taktayaktak is now under construction. The last leg of the journey ends at the Arctic Ocean, at the northern tip of the North American continent. The town of Taktayaktak is just called Tak by most people. Located north of the Arctic Circle, the town has barely 850 residents. The Beaufort Sea is frozen over for most of the year. Known for many years as Port Brabant, the town was renamed in 1950, becoming the first place in Canada to revert to its original indigenous name.
It's 11:05 at night, but still this light, that is the whole Beaufort Sea, which is a part of Arctic Ocean. This is where I wanted to film the Northern Lights for many, many years. And I didn't know the forecast was for snow tonight, but it just happened like this. So I have to wait probably another hour before Northern Lights will appear, but it's clear. I may get some really nice aurora tonight.
Although the weather is good and some northern lights do appear, the activity is not quite as dramatic as Yuichi had hoped. The next morning, the photographer visits the local elementary school to talk to students about his work.
This is Yellowknife. See, the color, red is on top and then green is on the bottom, right? So, because the nitrogen, whoa, this was a big blow up. Have you seen something like that? Have you heard any mythology or your grandpa, grandma says, you know, you don't go outside or something when the lights are out? Do you know any stories?
If you whistle at the northern lights, they said you can get cursed or something.
Capture you? Oh. So do you whistle? Do you know anyone who's actually captured by northern lights? No?
In all the years Yuichi has been photographing the northern lights, he has never tried whistling at them. Tonight is Yuichi's last night in Tak, and his last chance to capture the image he imagined as a child, the northern lights suspended over the frozen Arctic Ocean. The celestial phenomenon is so strong tonight that the aurora is even visible with the naked eye. And luck is on his side. It stops snowing and the clouds lift.
Wow, it was cloudy all day, a little bit of snow, and I was hoping and hoping. Didn't happen, but just after midnight it started to thin. Clouds are just disappearing, and 1 o'clock entire sky was filled with northern lights. This is amazing, just all over the place right now. Everybody, interpret really differently, but actually you're seeing the same stars. The sky's just one here on the earth, so everybody is under the sky, so borderless sky. It's great for maybe a peace.
Now, at the end of the trip, Yuichi cannot help but challenge the northern lights. And what do you know? Apparently, they aren't as mean and nasty as some think. Yuichi Takasaka's childhood dream of one day seeing the northern lights over the Arctic Ocean has come true. Now, right at the end of his adventure, he finally gets the time-lapse shots he's been wanting for so long. When night falls, they come into their own. Astrophotographers portray the night sky in spectacular images. With their cameras, they show celestial phenomena in a way never seen before. On voyages of adventure over 5 continents. Bernd Pröschold is bound for Scandinavia in search of Europe's darkest night sky. He needs landscapes of total darkness without the glare of human civilization to let him see into the depths of the universe. Cologne in winter, just before nightfall. Astrophotographer Bernd Pröschold uses the rare opportunity of a particularly clear sky to go stargazing. It's close to freezing. Bernd prepares for some time-lapse photography, aiming to take a photo with a very long exposure every 10 or 20 seconds, with the result that more details of the night sky become visible. When played back, the sequence allows us to watch the movement of the cosmos. In cities like Cologne, the abundance of lights means that the stars are hard to see. Maybe 50, 100 at most. In remote, unlit desert regions, there would be thousands. Only there, far away from built-up areas, is it possible to view the less luminous celestial bodies. In a city, you can hardly see the Milky Way.
It's hard to believe, but in rural areas, where there's also snow on the ground, the Milky Way is so bright you can even see your own shadow.
Streetlights, traffic, illuminated billboards, light pollution deprives modern man of something that our ancestors took for granted: the nightly view into the cosmos.
Nowadays, half the people in Europe and the USA live in regions where you can no longer see the Milky Way.
To get good shots of the night sky, Bernd Pröschold heads for Norway, where he hopes to find Europe's darkest night sky. In the north of Norway, it's not just dark. Now, at the end of winter, it's still very cold, as much as 20 degrees below zero. Which means you have to be very well prepared and have just the right equipment.
Ultimately, it's about showing that our existence in the here and now, here in Cologne, surrounded by cars, is a very earthly perspective. But we live in a huge, immeasurable, ancient cosmos, and we forget that in our everyday lives.
By leaving the loud, bright city and leaving human civilization behind, he hopes to find total darkness and an undimmed view into the depths of the universe. The first stop on his journey is Rabjergmile at the extreme tip of Denmark.
I've now covered the first 1,000 kilometers and have reached the northernmost tip of Denmark. Located here is the largest drifting sand dune in Northern Europe. For astronomic landscape photography, this is very interesting because we're surrounded by sea here, the North Sea and the Baltic. And in the North Sea and the Baltic, there are obviously scarcely any sources of artificial light. This means the night sky is really dark, while the dunes provide a very light backdrop that at night also reflects the light of the moon and stars. And there's a nice contrast in the landscape, which is why areas with sand dunes are always very interesting in my work.
The incessant wind here means the voracious dune has been slowly shifting for centuries from the North Sea coast to the Baltic, burying everything in its wake: shrubs, trees, streets, houses. 250 years ago, the sand devoured the region's largest church. Over and over, the parishioners tried to shovel the sand away from the entrance, but finally had to give up and pull down the nave. Now all that remains is the whitewashed spire, a landmark for navigators.
It's very interesting to see how the dune eats into the trees. Maybe I'll find a location where the moonlight will cast the shadow of the trees onto the dunes. That would be ideal, but I'll have to see if I can find a good location.
This is the challenge, to find the perfect camera position. Under no circumstances does Bernd Pröschold want footprints in the picture, not even his own. He even hides his camera tripod behind a tree trunk so it won't cast an irksome shadow in the moonlight.
So, I would say we can get going.
Even though the sun is already below the horizon, refractions of light are still visible for another few minutes thanks to the curvature of the Earth. We have to wait another 45 minutes before the so-called civil twilight comes to an end and night begins. But it still isn't dark enough for astronomers. It is only once the sun has disappeared 18 degrees below the horizon that astrophotographers can get to work, when all the stars come out. Bernd exposes each photo for 15 seconds, 3 pictures a minute. When these images are played back at speed later on, it will be possible to see the movement of the stars. The long shadows of the moon also loom across the picture.
Tonight we have a full moon over the dunes. Obviously this is an advantage, as this gives you lots of light over the landscape. But a full moon also means the stars aren't as visible, since weaker stars don't come out in full moonlight. So you have to find the best possible compromise. But we do have very clear air at the moment thanks to the north wind, so we might still be able to see nice stars in the picture.
After taking numerous shots throughout the night, he heads off the next morning, continuing his journey through Sweden to Norway. From Rabiekmile in northern Denmark, he takes the ferry via Frederikshavn to Gothenburg. His search for the darkest night sky in Europe then takes him through Sweden and across the Norwegian border to Zølen, Røros and Hessdalen. In Norway, the landscape looks considerably more wintry.
The road starts to climb. This is a big advantage because everything I can take uphill by car, I don't have to drag up there on the polka. So it's going great so far.
The polka is a low, boat-shaped toboggan that Bernd can use to carry everything he needs for his shots, as well as more warm clothing, since it gets extremely cold here at night.
It's now 1:30 and it's starting to snow. But that's not a cause for concern yet. It's just a little cold front passing through. After these cold fronts, it often clears up, which is what I'm gambling on tonight.
For good time-lapse shots of stars, it is important to find a position above the tree line. One that offers the best chance for a clear view of the Zuhlin Massif under the night sky.
This is more or less how I imagined it. It does look very good. Now we just need slightly better weather. The conditions aren't really suited to astro shots yet. Like this, we can't see any stars. But I'm still optimistic because it looks like things are slowly clearing in the west. And if things go well, we should be able to see the arc of the Milky Way over the mountains around midnight, all bathed in moonlight. That would be my ideal, but we do still need to blow away the clouds a little.
Lo and behold, the cloud cover lifts. He now needs to act quickly. The light is developing perfectly and Bant wants to start shooting at dusk. But the equipment isn't ready yet. Amongst other things, he needs another lens warmer to stop the optics fogging over in the cold.
I'll be damned, what awesome light.
Minus 12 degrees.
But I'm still not taking any photos yet. I still haven't taken any photos. My hands are so frozen I can't work the camera. An old time-lapse rule says when you're done, tighten all the nuts again. After all, it has to hold for 15 hours. And here we already have it, the first loose nut. Okay, things can get going at last. The camera's running. Hopefully for the next 15 hours. On my trips, I search for solitude, so obviously I'm alone. But I enjoy it. Solitude is actually a means to an end. The aim is to get shots without any disturbance from light sources. As soon as you have people nearby, you also have disturbing sources of light, which is why I often come to Norway on my own. Sometimes a bit of company would be nice, but you can also enjoy the silence. It sounds strange, but silence in Norway is quieter than silence in Germany. You have to realize, since our beginnings, mankind has always looked at the stars in the night sky. We have always found something very fascinating there, which has given us food for thought. The night sky has prompted mankind to ask questions about ourselves, our own existence, and the existence of the world.
Back in his cabin at the campsite, the astrophotographer looks through last night's results.
An amazing sky. I'm standing here for a brief moment in the mist, and then it clears again. This looks very, very good. Oh, a fog bow. I've got a fog bow. That's really great. A rare natural phenomenon, right here in front of me.
A bit further north, we find members of the Sami community. The Sami, also known as Lapps, are considered the indigenous population of Scandinavia. Since time immemorial, they have driven their reindeer herds through the landscape, which was originally uninhabited wilderness. But when the first settlers arrived and set up their farms here, things got harder for the Sami, because the farmers were less enthusiastic about the reindeer grazing on their fields. Bernd is meeting Magne, who gets reindeer used to interacting with humans. Later on, the animals will be used to draw sleds. Only ever for a single winter, after which they are released back into the wild. Under the snow, they find their staple food, lichen.
The reason we use this is their natural food in winter. All around here in this area, it's all covered with lichen or moss, reindeer moss. It's called the kvetkrull. So it's tasteless.
Can I taste it?
No.
You can eat it?
Oh. It's not good, but it doesn't taste anything.
I've been hiking here a lot in the last years, but I never knew that it's possible to eat it.
Every year, the male animals shed their horns and big new antlers grow in their place. Magne's reindeers have names. This is the fastest buck in the herd. His name is Lubinastia, literally snow star. For the Sami people, the stars have always had special meaning.
When they moved with the reindeer herds in night, when it was clear sky, you can navigate after the North Star. That I have learned, to know where north is, always.
We have our special constellations. Are there also Sami constellations in the night sky?
I have heard the stories about the sky button, which is the North Star. It's a story about the hunt.
The hunt in the sky revolves around a single point, the North Star. On one side, there's a reindeer, and on the other, a hunter with his bow.
The hunt was going on all the night, from when it was dark till it started to be light again in morning. So they were afraid if they did miss the reindeer but hit the North Star, the button, the sky would fall down, and every life would die.
In his goatee, or traditional Sami cabin, Magne raves about his experiences under the Nordic night sky.
When you are sitting far away out in the wilderness, far away from electric lights, and it's complete dark, and you see the moon rises over horizon, and all these diamonds, the stars all over you, and you hear the enjoyable grunts from the reindeers, and that they are having good. And
it's a special mood.
Oh, it's complete silent, black. It's dark, and the stars are sprinkling all over. No, we had a night like that 3 nights ago. I were out with the herd, and my wife and I and my son. And my wife said, "Wow, it's a sight you can't see that many times in many places in the world anymore."
On his route further north is Røros. According to legend, it was here that a reindeer hit by an arrow and in its death throes scraped the ground with its hooves and uncovered copper ore beneath the Earth's crust. This discovery gave the city its prosperity. For 333 years, people in Røros made their fortune from copper. Today, the mines and smelting works have been shut down, and the former mining town has become a World Cultural Heritage Site. As it happens, all ore deposits anywhere in the world were created by the impact of comets very early in our geological history. This means that the metal objects we use on a daily basis, cars, tools, coins, are all, at least partially, gifts from outer space. Metals in the Earth's crust also play a special role a few miles north of here, in Hesdalen, where Bernd Brøsholt is going to visit his old friend Peder Skogas.
You're doing well?
Peder and the astrophotographer share a special interest. They both have a weakness for the so-called Hesdalen lights, a celestial phenomenon that may have something to do with the metal deposits in the soil. Peder Skogas shows him recent shots of the nocturnal lights that are frequently seen in the vicinity.
We have minerals in the ground here, sulfur and water. Then we have sulfur acid, we have zinc, we have copper, we have iron.
A lot of ingredients. You can cook a cake or...
or at least he made a natural battery of it.
It's this natural battery theory, yes. Do I get it right that in a small battery we have certain ingredients and all those ingredients we found in this valley, and so this is a real big natural battery, or...
Maybe.
Okay.
Lots of research, lots of more research.
For decades now, scientists at the universities of Ostfold and Bologna have been using special cameras and magnetometers to study the celestial phenomenon. But there are still no clear photographs of the phenomenon and no accepted scientific explanation.
Did you personally see the light with your own eyes?
Yeah, I saw it last time with some Italian researchers from Vista Point towards the south. Also means at the other side of the valley from here.
And what did you see?
These three lights moved a bit around and got together again.
Wow, this sounds really spectacular.
Yeah, but it's the traditional way it occurs.
What's your personal explanation for the phenomena? Because of course you've been reading all the articles published about these measurements, so we can't explain it completely, but what do you believe?
It must be something, but what is it? So I think that is the question.
Always up for a challenge, Bernd Brøsholt would love to help find an explanation and offers to try to take more shots of the Hesdalen lights. The only problem is his car is of limited use on these roads. Thankfully, his friend Peder knows someone who rents out snowcats, complete with their own driver. As many tourists have had accidents on snowmobiles or got stranded in the ice-cold wilderness, a special license is now obligatory. The destination, a plateau on the edge of Hesdalen, far away from the glare of the town. Out here, there might just be a chance of capturing the rare celestial phenomenon on film. After half an hour's drive, Bernd continues alone on skis, in search of the ideal motif. The area isn't just inhospitable, but also famed for the icy hurricanes that come up from the south, which is exactly where the wind is coming from today. It's likely to be a particularly cold night, but Bernd needs an unobstructed view, so cannot seek the close protection of trees or niches in the rock. Soon, the wind picks up. For one specific shot, Bernd uses a device that turns the camera very slowly in time with the rotation of the Earth.
This thing here has to point towards the North Star. The axis has to be facing exactly north. It's now leaning at 63 degrees, which is our geographic latitude. This means when you look through this axis, it goes straight to the North Star. When I switch it on here, I'm almost in tune with the cosmos, and the world drifts by.
To ensure this happens as convincingly as possible, the camera now stands upside down. The lens looks at the Earth like it would from a space station, giving the impression that the Earth is gliding through space.
When I'm out and about on my own in Norway, I'm not concerned at all at night, as Norway is one of the safest countries on Earth. And in the countryside, you're always safer than in the city. But here, I'm in a very special area that is a bit mythical, and there are crazy stories. That's why I feel a bit uneasy for once. Have I ever seen a Hesdalen light? I wonder about this myself, because in the nocturnal landscape you can see lots and lots of things. Satellites briefly flashing in the sky, planes with a strange flight path, scooter drivers out and about in places they actually aren't allowed to go. You could say nearly everything you see here is initially unexplainable, but with a bit of thought and research they can usually be traced back to quite everyday causes. But I do think I saw a very pale Hesdalen light once, as I frequently used to come out here and leave the camera running all night. And when you carefully go through the recordings, you see light phenomena you don't see in recordings taken in other parts of the world. That's a strong indication that they are Hesdalen lights. The Hesdalen phenomenon is often hidden in one of 1,000 frames, so when I play it back in real time, I obviously don't see anything. That's why I'm now going through this time-lapse frame by frame to see if anything unusual appears in the picture. For instance, here you can see a satellite flying past. Every second there is a chance you might capture something spectacular, but the probability is very low, which is why I see normal satellites here the whole time. But there doesn't seem to be anything sensational here. If a pale Hessdalen light did appear, it could happen, though there's only a very slim chance. That would be something really exciting for research. Hessdalen is a nice example of where you can make a contribution even with your own personal research. Where else can you do that today? We have outsourced all the scientific stuff, or the curiosity in the world, to universities. And we no longer marvel at the world ourselves. The Hessdalen phenomenon might not be visible here, but hidden in one frame you can actually see a snow hare, the Norwegian mountain hare. This is actually a real rarity. To get such a sharp picture of a wild animal in an astronomic time-lapse shot, that's really unique. To see the Milky Way, I have to use a 15-second exposure. So this snow hare was totally aware it was posing for the camera and stood still for 15 seconds. I will definitely publish the picture somewhere.
From Hessdalen, the search for a night sky free of intrusive light influences carries on northwards, to the coast, to Trondheim and later to Fosen. With 180,000 inhabitants, Trondheim is Norway's third largest city and located on a large fjord. It is a city with a long trading tradition and a checkered history. Fish, wood, ore and metal products were sent from here throughout Europe. In the 14th century, this rich city at the mouth of the river Nidelva was nearly obliterated by the plague. Astrologists at the time blamed the stars and the position of certain planets, coming up with explanations far removed from the science of astronomy as it is now practiced on the outskirts of the city. Here at the Astronomiske Forening Observatory, Bernd meets colleagues who are experts on infinity and use sophisticated telescopes to cast their gaze on distant galaxies.
So this one you took in the last month?
Yeah. And what you see here is what we call the Heart and Soul Nebula, and it's not very easy to see that it's a nebula. And then we have used a filter that takes only a very narrow portion of the light.
Special lens attachments filter out the different light sources, luminous hydrogen, oxygen, creating a colorful image that speaks volumes about the history of the universe.
So we get now an image that looks like this.
Yeah, this is a very beautiful image.
Yeah.
And if you see all the dots in here, the small structures, if you can you magnify it a little bit, Alan? In these areas, there form new stars. So if you come back in about some million years, the gas is gone and it's a lot of stars here instead. So I actually feel that I watch the creation when I watch the stars, when I see a supernova in a distant galaxy go, and I can see that. And then we know that this is actually the process of creating the pieces we are built of.
When I'm in the mountains and there is no light from the town, and you can watch out in the universe, you are aware that you are a very, very small thing. You're a small part of the big universe.
As a child, I obviously asked the infinity question. Mum, how big is the universe? To which I got the unsatisfactory answer, it's endless. But what comes after that? I was obviously preoccupied with the question. And what's fascinating about this is that even as an adult, the answer to this question doesn't come easily. But modern physics has a very simple answer that says, the universe is finite. You just can't imagine the edge because you never come up against a big wall at the end of the universe. Instead, it's abstract. You have to imagine it as curved space. When you run around the world, you never come up against a wall that you bounce off. So if you carry on flying in the same direction at some stage or other, you get back to where you started. This is roughly how modern physics explains the finiteness of the universe. And this is a working notion you can be satisfied with.
In any case, looking into infinity requires total darkness, and we won't find that in Trondheim.
Trondheim is one of the most light-polluted cities in Europe when measured against the size of the population. Here, 180,000 inhabitants produce as much light pollution as the whole of Berlin, which has several million inhabitants. The result is you can only see very few stars with the naked eye. Tonight we have a clear sky, but we can see only 2 stars, Vega and the planet Jupiter. If the sky was really dark, we would be able to see thousands of stars with the naked eye.
So Bernd continues further north, just as the scientists at Astronomische Verening advised. Fosen, a stunning landscape. Twisting fjords, tiny islands and mountains smoothed by the last ice age. The first stop-off is the settlement of Besaka, popular with professional anglers and amateur fishermen alike. Here, Bernd Pröschold wants to take shots of a very special coastal landscape under a canopy of stars, but only if there are no beacons or ships in the night to detract from the cosmos in his composition. The owner of his cabin has hooked him up with a German colleague, André Bayer, who works as a local builder, but spends his free time on astrophotography.
My idea was to drive down this road to the tip, from where I should have a good view towards the north, to the Milky Way and the North Star, with no sign of human settlements anywhere in the picture.
Yes, that's right, but this is a main shipping route, which means you always have to reckon on shipping traffic, especially for your photography. I would choose another viewpoint, a location that's further north beyond the main shipping route. André Bayer has a boat and is happy to take some time out for Bernd's nighttime expedition. The bay beyond Besaka is home to salmon farms and many islands, some of which are uninhabited. The astrophotographers head for Skjærøya Island. Only a few Norwegians live here usually, but now in the pre-season, it's almost empty. They need to find a place where nothing is shining apart from the stars. Bernd sets up the arm support he tried out at home, especially for this motif. The idea is that as the camera gradually gains height, it leaves the view of the beach behind.
Oh. Okay. Now the arm is running, the head is running. I'll switch on the camera, which will take a picture every 20 seconds.
Alle 20 Sekunden ein Bild.
On a rocky outcrop, Bernd notices a pool of water and has another idea. A second camera could film the starry night sky reflected in the pool, stars whose light has taken many hundreds of years to reach us.
When you first look at the stars, it's fascinating to realize that you are looking into the past. A star like Deneb in the constellation of Cygnus is about 1,600 light years away. So we're looking at it exactly as it was in the year 400 AD. This means the starry sky, without any need for metaphors, really is a time machine. So we can look back into the past. And this is obviously a very fascinating notion.
The next morning, snow is on the ground again. Bernd is fairly satisfied with the shots he has taken so far, but hasn't yet found the perfect conditions. A landscape at night totally devoid of any artificial sources of light. So on he goes, 1,000 kilometers further north, to the Arctic Circle, an area almost entirely uninhabited. From the bay near Besaka, the journey took him via Trondheim by plane to Narvik in the Arctic Circle. From here, he heads across the Swedish border and into the mountains until he reaches Abisko. Finally, he arrives in Narvik, a port famous throughout Europe. Thanks to the Gulf Stream, the port remains ice-free all year round, allowing Swedish ore to be brought here by train from Kiruna throughout the year, then shipped from here around the world. But Bernd Pröscholt's destination is still 40 kilometers away in the mountains. There, near Abisko in Sweden, is Torneträsk, a long frozen lake. Beyond it are mountain regions that are unpopulated and only accessible by helicopter or on skis. But that would take several days. But there's a problem. The weather is forecast to deteriorate dramatically. Strong winds and a drop in temperature are on their way, even if it doesn't look that way at the moment. Which is why Bernd doesn't want to stay up here on his own. The plan is for the pilot to drop him off, wait, and then take him right back down again so that only the cameras stay up here on their own.
Are there any villages or roads in this area? No. So completely dark in the night? Yes. Okay. On this side is totally forbidden to go with the snowmobile. Yeah. Let's have a closer look. Okay. Do you think it's possible to walk between the two peaks? How many meters is this between the peaks?
Two hours before sunset, they land at a spot on the plateau 1,000 meters up that Bernd pinpointed on the map and selected with the pilot beforehand. Once again, the plan is to set up two cameras a few hundred meters apart. One is to face northeast, the other southwest.
So here there's a really, really fantastic landscape. You could scarcely paint it any more beautifully. But it's very tricky. I can't stay here tonight because the weather is too uncertain. It's hard to know what lighting conditions there will be here at night. I'm not sure how strong the North Star will shine, or how the lights will look tonight. So it's a case of trial and error. I can't find a stable spot for the tripod on rocks. I've already had the tripod fly away with a heavy camera on it. But there has to be a small element of risk.
The legs of the tripod are secured with heavy rocks. The lens heater is attached. Timers are programmed. While the first camera is running, the second has to be set up on the other side of the plateau. But the sun is setting and there's no time to lose. Here too, bits of rock serve to stabilize the tripod in case the storm forecast is right.
Yes, hopefully the camera will still be standing here tomorrow morning.
Leaving the expensive cameras unattended is a difficult decision, but it's a risk worth taking for extraordinary photos. The night has barely fallen and Bernd is restless, cooped up in his room. The sky is beyond his control. Not the usual weather, but magnetic storms, strong solar winds in space are famous for producing the so-called northern lights. The northern lights appear when oxygen or nitrogen high in the atmosphere is ionized and given an electrical charge. Unable to go to his cameras on the mountain, Bernd can only watch the spectacle without recording it.
During an intense display of polar light, things happen in the sky whereby nature seems to have more imagination than the human soul. Then I just look up and forget my cameras. These are rare moments that amount to just a few hours of your life. So it's better if my cameras are already running when something like this is happening.
But are his cameras still running up on the mountain, capturing the northern lights? He'll have to wait and see. The next morning, Bernd hurries to his cameras up on the plateau, following his own tracks from the previous day. Up here, there is no trace of yesterday's storm.
Camera still in place? That's already a good sign. Camera's running? Great.
Ja, die läuft noch, das ist sehr gut. So, dann können wir die beenden. Und das Monitor erstmal.
The camera did run, but not properly. The automatic system seems to have failed and chosen the wrong shutter speeds.
Immer wieder 20, 20, 20, 20. Als wenn die Kamera zu doof wäre.
Maybe this one has failed. But there's still a chance I can save something with a lot of work.
There's still hope that the second camera kept working. 400 meters through the deep encrusted snow towards the northeast on the other elevation at the edge of the plateau.
Card full, exactly what it should say. That's already a good sign. Camera's on. And that means it's been shooting. Excellent. The polar light is there, as it should be. This camera worked properly. I think I can work with this. Turned out well, so it was definitely worth it.
Hat sich auf jeden Fall gelohnt.
Astronomical time-lapse photography reveals to us what huge cosmic events surround us every night. And this highlights what a small and transient role mankind plays in the universe. And if exactly this notion was conveyed to the viewer when looking at my shots, that would be wonderful.
Dann wäre das natürlich eine tolle Sache.
When night falls, they come into their own. Astrophotographers portray the night sky in spectacular images. With their cameras, they show celestial phenomena in a way never seen before. On voyages of adventure over 5 continents. Today, Chile. We follow Bobak Tefreshi to dizzying altitudes to explore the fascinating night sky of the planet's southern hemisphere. At home in Boston, Massachusetts, Bobak Tefreshi prepares for a trip to one of the highest observatories in the world. The Alma Observatory sits in the Chilean Andes at a height of 5,000 meters. Over the next 2 weeks, his expedition will take him to the Atacama Desert, where he plans to take time-lapse shots of the night sky. Shots that are only possible thanks to the unique conditions in this part of the planet. Our route starts at La Serena on the Chilean coast. It's late April, and while spring is slowly unfolding throughout the northern hemisphere, here in Chile, summer is drawing to a close. La Serena is Chile's second oldest city and the gateway to the southern part of the Atacama Desert, which stretches over some 1,000 kilometers of northern Chile. Outside the polar regions, it is the most arid desert in the world. Tomorrow, Bobak Tefreshi will head into the wilderness, but first he must run through his equipment one last time.
The most important is an equipment that can fit in my backpack. So to me, mobility is the ultimum priority. So I like to be very mobile, compact. Therefore, I even buy stuff sometimes based on their size and if they can be fit in my backpack.
Unlike many of his colleagues, Bobak only needs 2 or 3 cameras with lightweight tripods, plus some compact specialist astronomy equipment to get the images he has in mind. He prefers to rely on his intuition rather than overblown technology. The next morning, Bobak is collected by car.
Hola. Buen día. Oh, sorry, I don't speak Spanish, no Español. Okay.
Over the next few days, Carlos Varas will accompany Bobak on his journey towards the Argentine border. Their first stop, about 70 kilometers east of La Serena, is the Valle de Elqui, a valley in the foothills of the Andes. This fertile region in the middle of the desert is one of Chile's key fruit-producing regions. The Elqui Valley is famous for its grapes, which are either exported or, like here, made into pisco at one of the countless local distilleries. After distilling, this brandy-like schnapps is stored in wooden casks, like whiskey, before being bottled. Pisco is one of Chile's favorite drinks and is served in many variations throughout the country. The journey takes us along the Ruta de las Estrellas, the route of the stars. Bobak wants to spend the night here in the Elqui Valley in a very special hotel designed especially for stargazers like him.
For most people, nighttime environment is time to relax, to go to parties, to restaurants. For me, nighttime is the time to connect with nature.
As soon as he arrives, Bobak sets up his cameras for the first time-lapse shots of his trip.
I have friends all over the world. I'm usually good in making friends. I travel a lot. But my best friend since teenager time was the night sky. And this friend is very dynamic with changing faces every night. So it's not only, a screen of fixed constellations.
Tonight, an almost full moon shines over the mountains. Thanks to the highly sensitive sensors of Bobak's cameras, the shots look like they were taken in sunlight. This is because, unlike the human eye, the cameras can distinguish between colors at night. Here, though, the large majority of stars in the sky are visible with the human eye. This makes the Elqui Valley a favorite destination for passionate amateur astronomers who are now catered for by a very specialist branch of the tourist industry. The next morning, they slowly start climbing again, up from the Elqui Valley that already sits at about 1,300 meters above sea level. Their destination is the La Silla Observatory. Enthroned at 2,400 meters on the saddle of the La Silla mountain are the observatory's telescopes that a pan-European institute built here in the 1960s. The ideal conditions provided by the Atacama Desert now attract astronomers from around the world.
I got really interested in the night sky when I borrowed my neighbor's small telescope in early 90s in Tehran, the capital of Iran. And the first look to the moon really touched me so deeply that almost changed my entire life. And soon after, I realized in order to see things other than the moon, I need to go outside of the city and to find remote locations where the natural starry sky is still preserved.
The dryness of the desert and the height of the mountain summit allow astronomers in the southern hemisphere to observe the night sky throughout the year. At night, as if by magic, the domed structures open their roofs to the skies, and the astronomers direct their gaze deep into space, scanning the sky for planets that might be home to life. Bobak spends many hours searching for the right spot for his cameras. Sometimes an hour is enough, but often he photographs all night, trying to capture the movement of celestial bodies on film. The next morning, sunlight bathes the telescopes in a magical light. Despite a long night of shooting, Bobak is up early once more.
In general, any type of photography is the perspective of the photographer to reality. Sometimes we alter it immensely for artistic reasons. Sometimes we frame it in a way that shows our message. And sometimes we like to scan or document the nature as realistic as possible. But the most important is that photography is usually an inspiration to viewers to experience for their own.
In good conditions, by conservative estimates, 3,000 to 6,000 stars can be seen in the night sky with the naked eye. All of them are part of our galaxy, the Milky Way, the heart of which lies across the southern hemisphere.
And certainly in some countries like...
In the afternoon, Bobak accompanies one of the scientists working here in the core of one of the telescopes. Researchers like Briton Daniel Evans come to Chile from all corners of the world to collect data for their projects.
What the properties are for the habitable zone, but hopefully in the next few years, as we get longer and longer searches, we will start finding these planets further out from their stars to look at.
In the past few years, the high-resolution optical telescopes of La Silla have helped astronomers discover several thousand new planets.
It's only in the last 20 years that we have known there are planets other than the 8 in our own solar system. So it's a very new field. There are a lot of discoveries being made. And also, good for me, there are many discoveries to make. There are still many things we don't know that we are arguing about, that we do not yet understand about planets.
At the end of his visit, Bobak watches the telescope in action. Later in the evening, he explores the area around the observatory.
Many places of the Atacama Desert are still perfectly dark at night time. At the same time, it's one of the driest places on the planet. You almost feel walking on Mars.
To prevent light from street lights ruining these very special conditions, a large radius around the observatory has been closed off. Due to the rapid spread of light pollution, areas of complete darkness have now become a rarity on Earth. On his nocturnal wanderings, Bobak searches for traces of earlier inhabitants of the Atacama Desert. He has heard there are 1,000-year-old stone drawings called petroglyphs near the observatory. Soon he stumbles across a remarkable drawing.
This is probably the most complex petroglyph I've seen in this area. And it has also some human elements, a shaman, some other people around, a lot of, overlayered mysterious icons, animals, and probably things that might be related to the sky, including the Magellanic Clouds, which are obvious in the southern hemisphere.
I like to show the connection of these past landmarks with past time of the universe and with the starlights that are arriving to us after traveling hundreds of years in space.
The next day, Carlos takes Bobak back to the airport in La Serena. It's time to say goodbye.
Hey, Carlos. Gracias.
Un gusto verte, conocerte.
All the best.
From here, he journeys further north to even higher and darker areas of the Atacama Desert. The city of Calama is significant largely due to its copper mine and its position on the way to the northeast of the country.
I might presume you must be Bobak, if I'm not wrong.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, man. Welcome.
Waiting for Bobak in Calama is Xavier Valdivia. Xavier works as a mountain guide in the Andes and will be helping Bobak find the right motifs for his shots.
So you come from Iran?
Yes.
That's a beautiful country that I didn't have any chance to visit, but I heard that the friendliest people are living there.
Yeah, we are famous for that, but not many people go to Iran for tourism these days. It was one of the most touristic countries in the past.
Calama is located on a plateau at an altitude of about 2,500 meters. Rising up on the horizon are the volcanoes of the Andes Cordillera, the expedition's final destination. area east of Calama is famous for the colored mineral stone that gave this valley its name, Valle del Arcoiris, or Rainbow Valley. Here too, early desert dwellers left their mark in the rock.
So how many petroglyph pictures are actually here? Have you ever counted how many?
No, no.
Bobak has met up with Chilean archaeologist Ana Maria Barón to find out more about the origins of the drawings and their connection with the night sky.
Always we found more. Este panel está puesto en un lugar.
This petroglyph panel is placed at a very special location. Overlooking all this pasture land here at Hierbas Buenas, this is probably where the domestication of the llama began. The first thing we notice in cave paintings are depictions of nature, and quite clearly the idea behind this was to connect with a higher being, something in the hereafter, because this is what gives us life. We know life begins and ends, but where does it go? The picture suggests a relationship we might not be able to explain, but one we can sense intuitively.
Pero sí la podemos intuir.
About 300 representations like this are said to be found in the Valle del Arcoiris. Archaeologists suspect that this valley lay on the transit route used by caravans of indigenous tribes on their way through the Andes. A widely used motif in the drawings of early desert dwellers is the llama. So important were these animals to human survival that they were worshipped almost as gods. Gods that were also visible in the night sky.
There is an ancient legend among the indigenous tribes of the Atacama Desert that tells of the galaxy of the llamas, where a representation of the llama is painted in the stars in the sky. So there is obviously a link between the llamas and our lives. Because for these indigenous peoples, llamas were a main source of food, what gave them life. The llamas connect life on Earth with the sky and the stars. And this connection is expressed in the paintings. Since ancient times, they have believed there is also a llama in the sky.
Natives of the Atacama Desert recognized the figure of the llama in the dark sections of the Milky Way. But the constellation is also significant for peoples of other continents in the southern hemisphere. The Australian Aborigines, for instance, worship a very similar constellation that they see as a desert bird, the emu. Gazing up at the Milky Way has been part of life on our planet for thousands of years. Today, 2/3 of humanity live in places where our galaxy is no longer visible due to light pollution.
I believe experiencing the view of the Milky Way in natural night sky, just seeing it with your own eyes, is something that every person on this planet should experience. It will be an everlasting memory in your mind.
Tonight, Bobak will sleep under the stars to acclimatize to the thin air that comes with being 3,000 meters above sea level. While Bobak puts up his tent, Xavier gets on with preparing their supper.
Great night.
Great night. Good.
Great.
You did it well.
I realized that there is no better way to reconnect with our origin, to understand our position in the universe than exploring the night sky.
Bobak stays awake until the moon casts its long shadows and the valley is finally ablaze with light. The next day, they continue to San Pedro de Atacama. The desert village lies on the transit route that connects the Chilean coast with the neighboring countries of Argentina and Bolivia. The oasis is home to just under 2,000 people and attracts about 50,000 tourists per year. The center of San Pedro, with its typical adobe architecture, is a popular hub for visitors heading up and into the Andes. In the afternoon, a storm suddenly arrives, thwarting Bobak's original plans for capturing the sky over San Pedro in a few well-chosen time-lapse shots.
Tonight is completely overcast, and this is a stormy desert. Rain happens twice per year, and we have one of them today. But on the other hand, I was so exhausted after last night with the petroglyph that I took the opportunity to rest.
The next morning, our route takes us to an area south of San Pedro. In the desert sand are the tumble-down remains of old adobe walls, vestiges of a settlement, possibly dating back to the continent's pre-colonial days. It was amidst these inhospitable desert conditions that rivers created an oasis. Further south, its water flows onto the Atacama salt flats. With an area of over 3,000 square kilometers, this is the third largest saline lake in the world. There are vast underground mineral deposits here. But at some of the lagoons, the salt also creates a spectacular natural phenomenon at the surface too.
As I was traveling to remote areas, villages of Iran as a teenager to observe the night sky, I became more and more interested in nature too. So astronomy brought me to nature. Since I was a teenager, I started also hiking and climbing, looking for dark sky, but at the same time natural attractions.
At a neighboring oasis not far from San Pedro is another of the region's attractions. The telescopes belong to the private observatory of the French astronomer Alain Maury.
Alain, great to see you again.
Yeah, long time. How many years?
2 years.
2 years.
Looks like 20 years, yeah.
No, it looks like 2 weeks. It goes too fast.
Alain worked as a leading scientist at one of Chile's European observatories until he grew bored. Now he rents out telescopes to amateur astronomers around the world, allowing them to use the internet to remotely control the optical instruments here and retrieve the photographs they take.
It's one of the oldest telescopes we have here. We have it since 2009. And
so each night, probably 10 countries active here.
Yes,
It's an
exactly.
international
Yeah.
observatory.
Yeah.
So each night from your home, you open all of them?
No, they do.
Yeah, they do, okay.
I have a program with Serge Brunier, I believe.
Yeah. Serge has been here 2 years.
Alain designed and built many of the telescopes himself. Before night falls and he has to start to work, he and Bobak swap stories about their joint passion.
How many telescopes in total are here?
I've not counted. Between the ones which work, the ones which are stored, the ones which I could finish, about 30.
It's a real telescope farm. You plant telescopes instead of trees.
Yeah, exactly. Well, trees, take a lot of time. We grow a pepper tree about 8 years ago, and it's like this, So it's not a good place for trees and plants, but for telescope, it's a good place. Of course, the people coming to San Pedro are relatively high-level people. They are educated people who can travel, and they are interested to look at the geology, the volcanoes, and so on and so on. But they also know that the Atacama is the astronomical capital of the world, and so they come here and they observe, they discover. What I explain to people, this is the normal sky. You have the Milky Way and everything, and for most people it's not normal anymore. They have not seen that in a long time. To me, at least, it's a lot funnier and nicer to do this type of outreach activity than to work in a professional observatory where you work with computers and not with people. Nicer people too.
Tonight, it is not just the Milky Way that passes over Alain's observatory. A little while later, the moon once more douses the sky with a gleaming light. From here, it is also possible to see the Magellanic Clouds, two small galaxies that neighbor the Milky Way and are hundreds of thousands of light years away from us. At nightfall, the telescopes in Alain's Astro Park come to life. Many of his customers watch the sky for serious reasons, as well as for fun. Visitors can learn something about the fascination of astronomy and come a little closer to the stars. Even the craters of the moon can be seen with a basic telescope. The next morning, Bobak finally has time to really relax. Before continuing on his journey, he checks his shots from the past few days. As an astrophotographer, Bobak puts his heart and soul into his passion for the night sky. To better protect those few places on Earth that are still entirely dark, he even founded an international astrophotography network.
We all share the same sky. We all see the same window to the universe with some hours of difference. That experience gave me the idea of how the night sky has the unique potential of uniting cultures.
This realization prompted him to network with colleagues from around the globe. Now they run a joint platform, The World at Night, through which they sell their pictures and recordings. Together they aim to remind people of the night sky's beauty and raise awareness of the dangers it is facing. Geologists believe that the Atacama Desert formed around 15 million years ago. Before that, water covered its surface, forming a bizarre landscape that is reminiscent of the Moon or Mars. From the vast expanse surrounding San Pedro, the next stage of their route takes them to the foot of the Andes, to a height of 3,500 meters. Here too, the few veins of water are the only places where lush vegetation flourishes. In the night ahead, Bobak is planning to make a characteristic desert motif the protagonist of his time-lapse shots.
I arrive in places usually in daytime to scout around and see the potential of a place at nighttime. I usually plan ahead of time, sometimes a few months in advance, but sometimes just a few minutes before the imaging session when I look around and see my foregrounds. To me, night or night sky, in a way, is my second home. But still, when I'm alone out somewhere, remote, I have this mysterious, sometimes terrifying moments. The sudden fears of being alone at night with sounds of nature, possibilities of encountering wild animals, or a stranger at night which is surprised by you and you're surprised by him. These are all fears that come to you, but in a cycle it can come and disappear because there are other feelings at the same time. The feeling of capturing the beauty of night sky, that moment, and then sharing it with public later. Night is not only a dark, unsafe environment. It's something, I call it dark beauty. Night is something to explore, to learn, and to respect.
The following morning, the trip nears its grand finale. Just before the Bolivian border is the Alma Observatory, home to one of the world's most important astronomy projects. The observatory consists of a control center at an altitude of 3,000 meters and a telescope at 5,000 meters. The EU, USA, Japan and other nations have joined forces to build the observatory over the past 15 years, hoping to gain new insights into the origins of the universe. Bobak drops into the base station to meet an engineer who can take him on a tour of the high-tech labs.
Thank you for your time. Nice meeting you. I heard you're also doing some astrophotography.
Yes, kind of an amateur thing.
What deepest sky?
I was looking at your Facebook page.
Pablo Carrillo is one of the Chilean team at the observatory. Unlike at La Silla, the engineers and astronomers here work full-time on site. What is special about ALMA is that the observatory does not use optical telescopes, but a network of 66 antennae, whose data are then combined by a supercomputer to form one single signal. Here at the lab, the state-of-the-art instruments are regularly taken apart for maintenance, allowing the extremely delicate sensors to continually record the faintest radio waves in space.
So this is kind of 24-hour all-time observation.
That's the idea in the steady-state stage. This is
With the ALMA radio telescope, the scientists can see into parts of the universe that were entirely unexplored until a few years ago.
Well, basically, what ALMA does is catch those very faint signals that come from outer space to make a beautiful image of something that we cannot see with our eyes. Of course, it's impossible to see with the optical telescope, but ALMA, we can do it. We can see molecules in the outer space. We can see where sugar is. We can see the alcohol was found. Really crazy thing that we are doing with this.
In the control room at the base station, the scientists observe the data received by the radio telescope. Data that is not dependent on it being dark, since radio waves can be received at any time, day or night. Video cameras monitor the telescope's antennae on the 5,000-meter-high Chachnantor Plateau. Before Bobak is allowed up there, he has to undergo a health check. The swift ascent from 3,000 to 5,000 meters is a medical risk and only allowed for people in good health. During the examination, the oxygen content of his blood is measured, revealing any signs of altitude sickness. Even during the drive up, he has to check the oxygen levels in his blood. His body has 45 minutes to acclimatize to an ascent of 2,000 meters. I'm coming up. I'm at about kilometer 41. In 15 minutes, I'll be at the top and you can call.
Please could you call me on 6630, 6630? Thanks.
Everything is okay?
I don't know. I don't know, to be honest.
There is any issue?
Maybe the weather.
Yeah, so they're concerned about the fast wind and our safety.
How it's changing the weather. So you can see the clouds behind us.
So we might have some kind of sudden evacuation.
Yeah, maybe some restrictions in the hour, in the time. Let's see.
Their fears are confirmed. Just a few meters up, a heavy snowstorm strikes, jeopardizing Bobak's expedition. But he's lucky. The Altiplano is not evacuated, and Bobak and his companion continue their journey upwards. Just before nightfall, they reach the Chachnantor Plateau. This is not the first time Bobak has had to work at such altitudes. Nevertheless, on arrival, he feels weak and slightly queasy.
Well, it's actually a very cold night, and this plateau has a special microclimate. It feels more in altitude. So it's better to use the oxygen time to time, just to keep the brain fresh. You don't want to make any mistake of not being sharp enough. So let me do it. The condition is quite unusual for Alma because the wind is very fast and the storm is approaching. There was another storm last night. So this is a bit, or more than a bit, colder than usual.
The temperatures drop rapidly to minus 25 degrees Celsius. Despite the icy wind, Bobak sets up his cameras for some time-lapse sequences. The antennae give him warning signals due to the storm.
It's a bit challenging, I would say, tonight. I'm not sure what kind of content I can make. But it's always like this, you know, astrophotography happens at nighttime and with unusual and unexpected condition.
But Bobak doesn't give up.
But they killed my time-lapse. They always do that.
Even when the security staff drive across his filming with their headlights on.
First of all, being on top of the world's observatories in a way, because this is one of the world's highest, it's such a great feeling that you forget about the freezing temperature, wind, and issue with the lights. At the same time, some astrophotography is being at the right time in the right place. Sometimes you feel you're in the worst time in the worst place.
Bobak's stubbornness and his will to defy even the most adverse conditions pay off. He is rewarded with time-lapse shots of unparalleled quality and perfection. From this altitude, he gets a unique view of Licancabur, an inactive volcano that rises to almost 6,000 meters. With its perfectly formed cone, it is an unforgettable sight and worshipped by the indigenous population. Rising up at the Bolivian border is the Altiplano, a high plateau in the Andes that extends all the way to Peru. On his journey, Bobak also meets herds of llama that are kept for their wool by the Indios. He also encounters countless vicuñas, wild relatives of the llamas that belong to the camel family. The final leg of the journey ends at a lonely spot on the Altiplano, where two rivers converge. This is where Bobak will spend his last night under the Chilean night sky. At this altitude, the temperature falls below -15 before sunrise. Yet another test for him and his equipment.
For me, this ending point of the trip is most spectacular because we see the most starry sky finally. There is absolutely no piece of cloud in the sky at the moment. It's completely blue, and when it gets dark, we will see one of the best night sky available on this planet tonight.
In the evening, the Altiplano landscape reveals its most beautiful side once more. Flamingos rest in the lagoons, almost 4,500 meters up. Tonight, the waning moon will only appear in the sky for a short while. Then the sky will belong to the stars alone. For the last time on this trip, the Milky Way rises over the Andes. Not a single source of artificial light disturbs this view of the firmament, a view that has been seen for thousands of years here, as far back as to the early dwellers of the Atacama Desert. Thanks to his tireless work, this is a treasure Bobak can preserve for posterity, sharing it with people all around the globe.